HOA President Karen Whitmore hated seeing Emma in a wheelchair on her porch every morning. It ruined her perfect neighborhood. So Karen bought industrial acid and threw it on the disabled girl's face, scarring her forever. But Karen didn't know Emma's father was a SWAT officer seeking justice. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The September sun had barely kissed the horizon when Emma Rodriguez wheeled herself onto the small porch of their modest townhouse. At 16, she had learned to find joy in simple moments, the way morning dew made spiderwebs glisten, how robins sang their first songs of the day. Her long dark hair cascaded over her wheelchair as she adjusted the colorful blanket across her lap. "Careful, Mija," her father Marcus called from inside, his voice warm with the protective love that had defined their relationship since the car accident 3 years ago. The same accident that took her mother and left Emma's legs paralyzed. Marcus Rodriguez watched his daughter through the kitchen window as he prepared her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes. To the world, he was Officer Marcus Rodriguez, a decorated SWAT team leader with 15 years of service. But here, in this quiet townhouse in Riverside Gardens, he was simply Dad. A single father doing his best to give his daughter a normal life despite the wheelchair, despite the stairs, despite everything. Emma inhaled the crisp morning air and smiled. She had physical therapy at 10, then her online art class at 2. Life had handed her challenges, but she refused to be defeated. Her sketch pad rested on her lap, and she was penciling the outline of the oak tree across the street when she heard it. The sharp click of heels on pavement. Well, well, well. Emma's stomach dropped. She knew that voice. Everyone in Riverside Gardens knew that voice. Karen Whitmore stood at the edge of their small front yard, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun that seemed to stretch her already pinched face. She wore a crisp white pantsuit and held a clipboard like a weapon. As the HOA president, Karen treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom, and anyone who didn't meet her exacting standards became her enemy. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," Emma said politely, though her hands gripped her wheelchair's armrests. "There is nothing good about it," Karen snapped, her pale blue eyes scanning Emma with undisguised disgust. "Do you have any idea what your presence is doing to this neighborhood's property values?" Emma felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." "That," Karen pointed a manicured finger at Emma's wheelchair, "is an eyesore. Every morning, you sit out here like some kind of charity case, reminding everyone that this neighborhood has gone downhill. I've received complaints." "Complaints about what?" Emma's voice trembled. "I'm just sitting on my own porch." "You're dragging down the aesthetic," Karen hissed, stepping closer. "And that hideous ramp your father built? Completely against HOA regulations. I've tried to be patient, I've tried to be understanding, but clearly, your kind doesn't belong in a community like ours." The front door swung open. Marcus stood there, his 6'2" frame filling the doorway. His jaw was clenched, his dark eyes flashing with barely controlled anger. "Is there a problem here?" Karen didn't flinch. "Yes, Mr. Rodriguez. Your daughter is the problem. I'm giving you 30 days to remove that ramp, and I expect her to stop making a spectacle of herself every morning. This is a respectable neighborhood. My daughter has every right to sit on our porch," Marcus said, his voice dangerously calm. "And that ramp is ADA compliant. You have no legal standing." "I have HOA authority," Karen shot back. "And if you don't comply, I'll make sure you're fined into foreclosure. Maybe then you'll find somewhere more suitable for people like her." The words hung in the air like poison. Emma felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of this woman. Not ever. Marcus descended the porch steps slowly, his police training evident in every controlled movement. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to say this once. Stay away from my daughter. Any further harassment, and we'll be having a very different conversation." Karen's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Rodriguez?" Because I know people, important people. One phone call, and your little security guard job could vanish. I'm a SWAT officer, not a security guard, Marcus corrected quietly. But that doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you leave my daughter alone. We'll see about that, Karen said, turning on her heel. 30 days, Rodriguez. Then I'm coming for you. As Karen stalked away, Emma finally let the tears flow. Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair, his large hands gently taking hers. Don't let her poison get to you, baby girl. She's just a bitter woman with too much time and too little heart. Why does she hate me so much, Dad? Emma whispered. What did I ever do to her? Marcus had no answer that would ease his daughter's pain. He simply held her hands and wished he could shield her from every cruelty the world had to offer. But he couldn't. And what happened next would prove that some people's cruelty knew no bounds. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen Whitmore's campaign against the Rodriguez family intensified. She filed formal complaints about their lawn being 2 inches too tall. She claimed their mailbox was the wrong shade of black. She sent certified letters demanding they repaint their front door because it was off-white instead of pure white. Marcus dealt with each complaint methodically, keeping every document, every letter, every piece of evidence of harassment. As a law enforcement officer, he knew the value of documentation. But he also knew that Karen was careful to stay just within legal boundaries, making her attacks impossible to prosecute. Emma tried to maintain her routine, but the joy had leaked out of her mornings. She still wheeled herself onto the porch, but now she felt exposed, vulnerable. She caught Karen staring at her from across the street, that cold smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Don't give her the satisfaction, Marcus would say. You have every right to enjoy your own home. But rights and reality were different things. Emma felt the weight of Karen's hatred pressing down on her like a physical force. The breaking point came on a Wednesday afternoon. Emma had just finished her online art class and was practicing the watercolor techniques her instructor had taught her. She had set up her easel on the porch, letting the afternoon light illuminate her painting of a butterfly, a symbol of transformation and hope that she related to deeply. She was so absorbed in mixing the perfect shade of blue when a shadow fell across her canvas. Still here, I see. Emma's hand jerked, sending a streak of blue across her painting. She looked up to find Karen standing at the base of the porch steps, her expression twisted with contempt. Mrs. Whitmore, please. Please what? Karen interrupted. Please leave you alone. Please stop caring that you're turning this neighborhood into a freak show. I'm not doing anything wrong, Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm just painting. You're existing, Karen spat. And that's the problem. Do you think anyone wants to look at you? Do you think anyone wants their children seeing someone like you and asking uncomfortable questions? Emma felt something crack inside her chest. Someone like me? I'm just a girl who uses a wheelchair. I'm a person, Mrs. Whitmore. You're a reminder of everything that can go wrong, Karen said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You're tragedy on wheels, and you make people uncomfortable. If you had any decency, you'd stay inside where no one has to look at you. Tears streamed down Emma's face now, unchecked. Why are you so cruel? What did I do to make you hate me? You don't have to do anything, Karen said. You just have to be what you are. Broken, useless, not a burden. Something inside Emma shattered completely. She had endured physical pain from her injuries. She had grieved her mother. She had learned to navigate a world not built for wheelchairs. But this? This deliberate, calculated cruelty from someone who should have been a neighbor, a community member, maybe even a friend? This was a different kind of pain. My mom died in the same accident that put me in this chair, Emma heard herself saying, her voice hollow. I watched her die. I screamed for help while my legs bled and I couldn't feel them anymore. Every day, I wake up and choose to keep going. I choose to find joy. I choose to create art and study and hope for a future. And you want to take that away from me because you don't like looking at my wheelchair? For a moment, something flickered across Karen's face. Was it shame? Doubt? But then her expression hardened again, and Emma knew the answer. Karen Whitmore felt nothing. Save your sob story, Karen said coldly. You have 2 weeks left. Then I'm taking action. As Karen walked away, Emma sat frozen, her paintbrush trembling in her hand. She didn't hear her father's truck pull into the driveway. She didn't notice him approaching until his hand gently touched her shoulder. Emma? Marcus's voice was thick with concern. Baby, what happened? Emma couldn't speak. She simply turned and buried her face against her father's chest, sobbing with a depth of pain she hadn't felt since the accident. Marcus held her, his own heart breaking as he felt his daughter shake with grief and humiliation. She called me broken, Emma finally managed to choke out. She said I'm useless. That I should hide inside so people don't have to look at me. Marcus felt rage ignite in his chest, white-hot and all-consuming. Every instinct screamed at him to march over to Karen's house and confront her. But he forced himself to breathe, to think like the trained officer he was rather than the enraged father he felt like. Listen to me, he said, gently tilting Emma's face up to meet his eyes. You are not broken. You are not useless. You are my daughter, and you are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful person I know. Karen Whitmore is sick inside, and that has nothing to do with you. Then why does it hurt so much? Emma whispered. Because you have a heart, Marcus said. Because you're human, because her words were designed to hurt. But they're not true, Emma. Not a single word. That night, Marcus filed a formal harassment complaint with the police department and contacted a lawyer about Karen's behavior. He was building a case, documenting everything. But as he lay in bed that night, listening to his daughter cry herself to sleep in the next room, he felt helpless in a way he never had before. He had faced down armed criminals. He had kicked in doors and rescued hostages. He had stared down the barrel of guns and kept his cool. But he couldn't protect his daughter from words. From looks. From the casual cruelty of a woman who saw Emma as less than human. He didn't know that Karen Whitmore's cruelty was about to escalate beyond words. He didn't know that in 72 hours, his life would detonate. He didn't know that monsters didn't always look like monsters. Sometimes they looked like well-dressed women with clipboards and hatred in their hearts. Saturday morning arrived with the false promise of peace. Marcus had the weekend off, and he'd planned a special day for Emma. They were going to drive to the art supply store she loved, then have lunch at the Italian restaurant where she could get her favorite fettuccine alfredo. Simple pleasures, but ones that felt precious given the tension of recent weeks. Emma wheeled herself onto the porch at 8:30, determined not to let Karen Whitmore steal her joy. She had her sketch pad and was planning to spend 30 minutes capturing the morning light before they left. Marcus was inside, packing a small cooler with water bottles and Emma's medications. He was mentally reviewing his harassment documentation, planning his next conversation with the lawyer. He had evidence now. Dates, times, witnesses who'd heard Karen's comments. He was going to make sure his daughter never had to face this kind of treatment again. He heard Emma scream. The sound cut through the morning air like a blade, high-pitched and filled with terror and agony. Marcus dropped everything and ran, his heart hammering against his ribs. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. Emma was screaming, her hands clawing at her face as smoke rose from her skin. Her beautiful face was covered in something that bubbled and burned, eating through her skin like fire. Her screams were inhuman, primal, the sound of someone experiencing unimaginable pain. And across the street, Karen Whitmore stood frozen, a glass container in her hand, her face a mask of shock at what she'd done. Marcus's training took over. He grabbed the garden hose and turned it on full blast, spraying Emma's face with water even as she screamed. The water washed away the worst of the acid, but the damage was already catastrophic. The skin on the right side of Emma's face was melting, revealing raw, red tissue beneath. "Call 911. Marcus roared, not even sure who he was yelling at. His hands shook as he kept the water flowing, trying to dilute the acid, trying to stop the burning. Emma's screams had turned to whimpers. Her eyes, God, her eyes, one was swelling shut, the lid burned and blistered. A neighbor ran over, phone already to her ear, giving the emergency operator their address. Others emerged from their houses, drawn by the screams, their faces going pale with horror at what they saw. Marcus cradled his daughter, keeping the water flowing over her face, his own tears mixing with the water. "Hold on, baby. Hold on. Help is coming. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." But he didn't know if that was true. He didn't know if anything would ever be okay again. His eyes found Karen across the street. She hadn't moved. The container, a glass jar that had once held cleaning solution before she'd filled it with industrial acid, dangled from her fingers. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Marcus saw something that chilled him more than her crime. Karen had convinced herself she'd been justified. Even now, even seeing a 16-year-old girl's face melting off, Karen's expression held defiance. She'd finally solved her problem. She'd finally removed the eyesore from her perfect neighborhood. The ambulance arrived in 6 minutes. To Marcus, it felt like 6 years. The paramedics worked quickly, their faces grim as they assessed Emma's injuries. Chemical burns, 2nd and 3rd degree, covering 30% of her face. Possible damage to her right eye. They loaded her onto a gurney, and Marcus climbed into the ambulance with her, never letting go of her hand. As they pulled away, he saw police cars arriving. He saw Karen being approached by officers. He saw her trying to explain, her hands gesturing, her mouth moving with justifications and excuses. He didn't care. All he cared about was his daughter, who lay with her face wrapped in wet bandages, whimpering in pain despite the morphine the paramedics had administered. "Dad?" Her voice was small, broken. "I'm here, Mija. I'm right here. My face. I felt it burning. Dad, what did she do to me?" Marcus couldn't answer. His throat had closed completely, tears streaming down his face. He just held her hand and prayed to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. The hospital became their new reality. Emma was rushed into emergency surgery. Plastic surgeons, burn specialists, ophthalmologists, a team descended to try to save what they could of his daughter's face and vision. Marcus sat in the waiting room, his uniform still wet from the garden hose, his hands shaking. Other officers arrived, his captain, his team members, people he'd worked with for years. They sat with him, silent witnesses to his agony. It was his captain who finally gave him the update on Karen. "She's been arrested," Captain Hayes said quietly. "Assault with a deadly weapon, assault with caustic chemicals, hate crime enhancements. The DA is talking about attempted murder charges." Marcus nodded numbly. It didn't matter. No charges would undo what had been done to Emma. "There's something else," Hayes continued, his voice careful. "Karen is claiming self-defense. Says Emma threatened her. Says she feared for her life." That got through Marcus's fog of shock. "What?" "It's bullshit, and everyone knows it," Hayes said quickly. "There are witnesses. That neighbor who called 911 saw the whole thing." Karen walked across the street with the container already in her hand. Emma never said a word to her. This was premeditated, Marcus. "She planned this," Marcus said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. "She bought acid. She carried it across the street. She threw it in my daughter's face. She planned to disfigure a 16-year-old girl." "Yes," Hayes confirmed. "And we're going to make sure she pays for every second of Emma's pain." The surgery lasted 7 hours. When the surgeon finally emerged, his expression told Marcus everything before he spoke a word. We saved her eye, Dr. Chen said, and Marcus felt a moment of relief before the doctor continued. But the damage to her face is extensive. The acid caused third-degree burns to approximately 35% of her facial tissue. Her right cheek, jawline, and the area around her eye bore the worst of it. We've done what we can to clean the wounds and begin the grafting process, but she's going to need multiple surgeries over the next several years. Will she? Marcus couldn't finish the question. She'll have significant scarring, Dr. Chen said gently. Modern plastic surgery can do remarkable things, but I won't lie to you, Mr. Rodriguez. Your daughter's face has been permanently altered. The emotional and psychological impact may be even more significant than the physical damage. Marcus felt the world tilt. Emma had already survived so much. The accident, losing her mother, learning to live in a wheelchair, and now this. Now her face had been stolen from her by a woman's hate. Can I see her? She's in recovery. Still sedated. But yes, you can sit with her. Marcus followed Dr. Chen through the sterile hospital corridors. His feet felt like lead. When they reached Emma's room and he saw his daughter lying in that hospital bed, her face wrapped in bandages except for her left eye and mouth, something inside him died. She looked so small. So vulnerable. Machines beeped around her, monitoring her vitals, delivering pain medication, keeping her stable. Marcus pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand. Her fingers were cold despite the warm hospital air. I'm so sorry, Mija, he whispered. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm so sorry I let this happen. Emma didn't respond. She was deep in medicated sleep, her body trying to heal from the violence done to it. Marcus sat there for hours, holding his daughter's hand, watching her breathe. And with each breath she took, his grief transformed into something else. Something harder. Something colder. Karen Whitmore had made a critical error. She'd thought she was attacking a helpless disabled girl and her working-class father. She'd thought she could get away with it because she had money and connections and a position of power in the community. She didn't know that Marcus Rodriguez wasn't just any father. He was a SWAT team leader who'd spent 15 years learning how to track down the worst humanity had to offer. He knew how the legal system worked. He knew how to build cases. He knew how to be patient and methodical and absolutely unrelenting in pursuit of justice. Karen Whitmore had thrown acid on the wrong man's daughter. And she was about to learn that actions had consequences. Even for wealthy HOA presidents who thought they were untouchable. Especially for them. Emma woke up in agony 3 hours after Marcus arrived at her bedside. Her first instinct was to touch her face, but her hands were gently restrained to prevent her from disturbing the bandages. Dad? Her voice was hoarse from intubation. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Her one visible eye found him, and Marcus saw his daughter's soul break in real time. My face hurts so much, she whispered. What happened? I remember Mrs. Whitmore and then, burning. Everything was burning. Marcus had rehearsed this moment in his mind 100 times in the past 3 hours. But no rehearsal prepared him for the reality of telling his daughter that someone had deliberately disfigured her. Karen threw acid on you, he said, his voice carefully steady. But you're safe now. She's been arrested. The doctors saved your eye, and they're going to do everything they can to help you heal. Emma was silent for a long moment. Then, how bad is it? The burns are significant, Marcus said honestly. He'd never lied to his daughter, and he wouldn't start now. You're going to need multiple surgeries. There will be scarring. But you're alive, Emma. You're here, and we're going to get through this together. She hated me that much. Emma's voice cracked. That she would do this to me? Marcus had no answer. How do you explain that kind of hatred to anyone, much less your child? How do you make sense of the senseless? Some people are broken in ways we can't understand, he finally said. This isn't about you, Emma. This is about her sickness, her cruelty. You did nothing to deserve this. But Emma was already crying, her tears stinging the burned tissue around her eye. I'll never be normal now. I was already the girl in the wheelchair, and now I'll be the girl with the ruined face too. You listen to me, Marcus said, gripping her hand. You are not ruined. You are Emma Rodriguez, and you are a survivor. You survived losing your mother. You survived learning to live with paralysis. And you will survive this. You are stronger than Karen Whitmore's hate. You are stronger than any scar. Emma wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel that strength he saw in her. But right now, all she felt was pain and fear and overwhelming grief for the face she used to have. The next days blurred together. Emma underwent 2 more emergency surgeries to address infection risks and begin the skin grafting process. Marcus barely left the hospital, surviving on cafeteria coffee and the sandwiches his team members brought him. The legal case against Karen Whitmore was building. The district attorney assigned one of her top prosecutors, Sarah Chen, who visited Marcus at the hospital to discuss the charges. We're going for attempted murder, multiple counts of assault with a deadly weapon, and hate crime enhancements, Sarah explained, her dark eyes fierce. The neighbor who witnessed it gave us a statement. Karen walked across the street with the acid already in hand. She called your daughter a cripple before she threw it. This was premeditated, targeted, and motivated by disability-based hatred. What's her defense? Marcus asked. Self-defense. She's claiming Emma made threatening statements and she feared for her safety. Marcus nearly laughed at the absurdity. My daughter is 90 pounds and in a wheelchair. Karen is a grown woman who planned this attack. I know. And the jury will know. We have security camera footage from your neighbor's doorbell camera. It shows everything. Karen approaching with the container, Emma sitting peacefully on the porch, the attack. All of it. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction. When's the trial? Fast-tracked due to the severity. 3 months. But Marcus. Sarah hesitated. Karen's hired Robert Morrison. Marcus recognized the name. Morrison was one of the most expensive and ruthless defense attorneys in the state. Let me guess. She's going to claim temporary insanity. That the HOA's stress made her snap. Probably. Morrison specializes in making monsters look sympathetic. He'll paint Karen as a woman under enormous pressure who made a terrible mistake in a moment of mental breakdown. It wasn't a mistake, Marcus said flatly. You don't accidentally buy industrial acid. You don't accidentally carry it across the street. You don't accidentally aim for someone's face. I agree. And we're going to prove it. But I need you to prepare Emma. Morrison is going to go after her. He'll make it seem like she was provoking Karen. He'll bring up every HOA complaint, every interaction, and twist them to make Karen look like the victim. Marcus felt his jaw clench. Emma is 16 years old and was attacked on her own porch. I know. But Morrison doesn't care about truth. He cares about winning. And he's very good at it. The preliminary hearing came 2 weeks later. Emma was still in the hospital, so she appeared via video link. Marcus sat beside her bed, holding her hand as they watched Karen Whitmore appear in court. Karen wore a modest gray suit and had styled her hair softly around her face. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a woman who'd thrown acid on a child. Her attorney spoke eloquently about her years of community service, her charity work, her clean record. Then the prosecutor presented the doorbell camera footage. The courtroom went silent as they watched Karen walk deliberately across the street, the container visible in her hand. They watched her approach Emma, who was simply sitting with her sketchpad. They heard Karen's words, captured clearly by the camera's audio, "This is what you get, you little cripple." They watched the throw. The splash of liquid hitting Emma's face. Emma's screams. Marcus running out, the horror of it all in high definition. Several people in the courtroom gasped. One juror covered her mouth. Karen's own lawyer looked shaken. The judge denied bail. Karen would remain in custody until trial. As they watched Karen being led away in handcuffs, Emma squeezed her father's hand. "Will this bring back my face?" she asked quietly. "No," Marcus admitted. "But it will make sure she can never hurt you or anyone else again." "Then what's the point?" Emma's voice was hollow. "She took everything from me, and a prison cell won't give it back." Marcus didn't have an answer. Because his daughter was right. Justice wouldn't erase the scars. Punishment wouldn't restore what had been stolen. But it was all they had. 3 months passed with agonizing slowness. Emma underwent 5 more surgeries. The doctors worked miracles with skin grafts and tissue reconstruction, but the scarring remained severe. The right side of her face bore permanent marks of Karen's hatred, textured, discolored skin that pulled slightly at her eye and mouth. Emma stopped looking in mirrors. She attended physical therapy appointments wearing large hoodies with the hood pulled up, hiding as much of her face as possible. The girl who had once sat on her porch creating art now stayed inside, curtains drawn, existing in a self-imposed exile. Marcus watched his daughter retreat into herself and felt helpless. He'd researched therapists, support groups, resources for burn survivors. Emma refused them all. She attended online school from her bedroom and spoke to no one except her father and medical staff. "She's depressed," her psychologist told Marcus during a private consultation. Which is completely understandable given the trauma. But she needs to engage with treatment. "She's isolating, which will only make things worse. She says nothing matters anymore," Marcus told the psychologist. "She says she's hideous and people will always stare and she just wants to be invisible." Karen Whitmore didn't just burn Emma's face. She burned her sense of self, her confidence, her hope. That psychological damage is going to take longer to heal than the physical wounds. Marcus knew the doctor was right. He just didn't know how to reach his daughter through the wall of pain she'd built around herself. The trial began in January. The courthouse was packed with media, local residents, and advocates for disability rights. The case had become national news. HOA president throws acid on disabled teen had captivated and horrified the country. Emma had to testify in person. She wore a medical mask covering most of her face, but her eyes were visible. Those eyes that had once sparkled with creativity now looked hollow and haunted. The prosecutor, Sarah Chen, was gentle as she questioned Emma. "Can you tell the jury what happened on the morning of October 15th? Emma's voice was barely audible. "I was sitting on my porch drawing. Mrs. Whitmore came over and started yelling at me. She said I was ruining the neighborhood. That people didn't want to look at me. That I should stay inside." "What happened next?" "She had a container in her hand. I thought it was iced tea at first because it was in a glass jar. Then she said, 'This is what you get, you little cripple,' and threw it on my face." Emma's voice cracked. "It burned so much. I've never felt anything like that. I thought I was dying." Several jury members looked visibly upset. One woman was crying. Then it was Robert Morrison's turn. Karen's defense attorney approached Emma with a sympathetic expression that Marcus knew was completely false. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm very sorry for what happened to you," Morrison began. "No one deserves to be hurt. But I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with Mrs. Whitmore. Had there been previous conflicts between you and her?" "She harassed us constantly," Emma said. "She filed fake complaints. She called my wheelchair an eyesore." "But didn't you sometimes say things to her? Argue with her?" "I defended myself when she was cruel," Emma said. "But I never threatened her." "You never told her you wished something bad would happen to her?" "No. You never said anything that might have made her feel unsafe?" "I'm a 16-year-old girl in a wheelchair," Emma said, her voice suddenly stronger. How could I possibly make a grown woman feel unsafe? Morrison's expression hardened. Mrs. Whitmore maintains that she felt genuinely threatened by you and your father. That this was a tragic overreaction to feeling cornered and afraid. Emma stared at him with her one good eye. She bought acid. She walked across the street to where I was sitting peacefully on my own property. She threw it directly at my face. That's not feeling threatened. That's trying to destroy me. The courtroom was silent. Morrison had nothing to say to that. The prosecution presented their case over the next week. The doorbell camera footage was played multiple times. Neighbors testified about Karen's escalating harassment. The manager of the hardware store where Karen had purchased industrial-strength drain cleaner, her source of acid, testified that she'd asked specifically for the strongest chemical they had. Medical experts described Emma's injuries in clinical detail. The surgeon who'd performed her emergency procedure showed pictures of the damage, photos so disturbing that 2 jury members requested breaks. And then Marcus testified. He described the sound of his daughter's screams. The image of her face melting. The helplessness he felt as he sprayed water over her burns. His voice remained steady throughout, but his hands gripped the witness stand hard enough to turn his knuckles white. Did you have any indication that Mrs. Whitmore was capable of this? Sarah Chen asked. I knew she was cruel, Marcus said. I knew she was harassing my daughter. But throwing acid on a child's face? He looked directly at Karen. No. I didn't think any human being could be that evil. Karen's expression didn't change. She sat at the defense table looking bored, as if this trial was just another inconvenience in her life. When it was Morrison's turn to present the defense, he tried to paint Karen as a stressed woman who'd snapped under pressure. He brought in a psychiatrist who testified that Karen had been suffering from acute situational stress disorder, caused by her HOA responsibilities. The psychiatrist claimed Karen had become fixated on the Rodriguez family because they represented her loss of control. She saw Emma's presence as a threat to her carefully maintained order. While her actions were extreme and unacceptable, they stemmed from mental illness rather than malice. Sarah Chen destroyed that testimony on cross-examination. Doctor, do people with acute situational stress disorder typically purchase acid weeks in advance? Do they typically plan their attacks? Do they typically show no remorse afterward? The psychiatrist stammered but had no good answers. Then Morrison made a critical error. He put Karen on the stand. It was supposed to humanize her. Let her tell her side. Show remorse. But Karen Whitmore didn't know how to feel remorse. Mrs. Whitmore, Morrison asked gently, can you tell the jury how you were feeling in the months before this incident? Overwhelmed, Karen said. The HOA was demanding, and the Rodriguez family was making everything so difficult. Every time I tried to maintain community standards, they fought me. Emma was always on that porch, and people were complaining. I tried to be understanding, but they wouldn't cooperate. Marcus felt his blood pressure rising. Sarah caught his eye and gave him a subtle shake of her head. Stay calm. And on the morning of October 15th? Morrison prompted. I went to have another conversation with Emma. I was carrying the cleaning solution because I'd been working on graffiti someone had sprayed on a wall. When I approached, Emma said something threatening. I can't remember exactly what, but I felt afraid. I just reacted without thinking. It was all lies. The video proved it was all lies. But Karen delivered her story with such conviction, such false sincerity, that Marcus could see how she terrorized the neighborhood for years. She was a master manipulator. Sarah Chen stood for cross-examination. She approached the witness stand slowly, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Whitmore, you said you were carrying cleaning solution. But the chemical analysis showed it was industrial-grade hydrochloric acid. Can you explain why you were carrying that to clean graffiti? I thought it would work better than regular cleaner. You thought industrial acid was appropriate for graffiti removal? I'm not a chemist. But you specifically asked the hardware store employee for the strongest chemical they had. You told him you needed something really powerful. Those are his words from his testimony. Do you dispute that? Karen's expression flickered. I wanted to make sure the graffiti came off. Mrs. Whitmore, isn't it true that there was no graffiti in the neighborhood that day? Silence.